Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. On today's review, we take a look at the Super 7 Thundercats Bengali. Today I'll be reviewing this figure in the following categories: accessories, articulation, design, is it essential to your collection, functionality, and price. Once those scores are totaled, I'll give you my opinion if this figure is a pass or a purchase. Is it possible that Super 7 actually released Thundercat figures on time? So for accessories, we really get a nice spread and some items that are really specific for the character, which I truly like. So we start out with this sort of omens. You can see that it's done in an orange and yellow. It's really not painted well. It's pretty sloppy. There's some paint that's just rough around the edges. Hopefully that's coming out pretty clear. And the weapon is done way too soft. As you can see, it has already warped. This is something that Super 7 continues to do, even though that this is an action figure line for adults. So not happy with this blade at all. But this blade, if I remember correctly, is when Lion-O broke the Sword of Omens and Bengali had to forge it. So we get a blacksmith or forge table, which I really like. Really like that this is included. Not a lot of paint here, but the top of it, for some reason, very simple, but for me, it looks exceptional. Really digging this piece. Here, though, I could really use some color. So, moving over, we have the blacksmith's anvil. You can see the symbol of, what's that, Thundera, or I guess so, Thundercats, there we go. And on top of it, you can see some metal ore. So speaking of ore, we have a small piece of Thundrillium or Thundranium. Can't remember what it was called. So we have Bengali's weapon of choice, which is the hammer of Thundera. And it is a pretty cool design. You have the Bengali's or tiger's head around the hammer itself with a long point in the back. You have some tassels at the bottom. Paint is applied pretty cleanly throughout, though it's also done with a softer plastic, so as you can see, it's very easy to bend, and I'm certainly not a fan of that. So we receive an additional head sculpt for Bengali. If you take a look at it, you can see some greenish paint around the eyes. Not sure I'm a big fan of that. You also have Bengali with what I'm going to call as an angry expression. However, you don't see the expression carry out throughout the face, so really not a fan of that. Looking at the hair is done pretty good. Some blue at the bottom, whites, and the black appears to be in place. I'm going to say that this actually is not black, it's navy blue. I think that was the proper color to go with. And I need to go back and look, like, was all of this part of Bengali white, including the teeth? And then we receive 4 pair of hands in total, 2 on the figure, which have open claws. So here, looking at fisted hands, they're done pretty well. Like that the peg is attached to it. And we do have some lines and textures to the hands. So as far as accessories, I'm really happy with what we got. I feel that this blacksmith table, along with this anvil, something about that is really a nice touch. The fact that they included the Sword of Omens, even though that this is a poor Sword of Omens, and perhaps I will recast this into a harder plastic. Nice touch, even though it's not painted well. So for overall accessories, I'm going to give Bengali a 10 out of 10. So for articulation, I'm not expecting anything exceptional. So when it comes to the head, doesn't look up at all, doesn't look down, it does rotate. No pivot whatsoever. The arm is able to kick out only that much to the side. It does rotate a full 360. So you do have an upper bicep cut. Single jointed elbow, only bending in that much. The wrist itself is on a hinge, so it does go side to side. We'll find out later if it comes with a vertical hinge. So looking at the torso, you do have a diaphragm cut, which actually crunches down pretty nice. Goes backwards that much. Does rotate, no pivot. So with the legs, it does kick out all the way to the side. It raises forward that much, backwards that much. You do have some good rotation. Coming down to the leg, you do have rotation underneath the knee. Coming down to the foot itself, it does go down that much, up this much, and I don't like how it pivots on an angle, but it does pivot. And I actually missed one point. You do have rotation up top at the elbow. And knees are double jointed, bending in only that much. So for articulation, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that this body is pretty antiquated. The head provides almost no movement at all. In 2022, just to be able to turn left and right, that's not enough. With the arm, you are able to find some movement in it. There are some nice areas. However, it is hindered by this single jointed elbow. And with the torso, it actually works a lot better than I thought it would, but not to have some sort of pivot, again in 2022, I would say it's a rough sell. So for overall articulation, I'm going to give Bengali a 5 out of 10. So for design, if you've watched some of my other Thundercat videos, specifically Tiger, you know that I am not a fan of this body. However, I will admit that this overall scope fits Bengali a lot better than it did Tiger, as Bengali was a shorter character, or at least appeared shorter on the cartoon. So let's bring Bengali in a bit closer to take a look at the head scope. So leaning it forward, if you take a look, see if we can zoom in just a little bit. There's a seam line running from one end all the way across to the other. That doesn't look so great. I do, however, like the stripes that are in his hair. If you look closely, they are navy blue, and under them is a very lighter shade of blue. Probably that matches his face. I think that was a cool touch, cool detail. Looking at the back of the hair, you can see the separation in color here. Going to the neck, unfortunately on my neck, you can see some of the blue paint peeking through. And being that it's such a bright white, it's pretty obvious. Now, this torso, I am not a fan of the design of the torso. However, this harness helps to cover that, so you don't see some of those big openings. I mean, you can kind of see it on the side, but I assure you that this helps to cover some of those. Now, with the harness, it is pretty accurate to the cartoon. What would have looked a lot better if they would have painted some of the smaller details, such as the buttons, and maybe outlined certain areas of the pouch in black. Turning Bengali to the side, I really like how Super 7 captured the colors. If you look at the bicep, I have such a complaint with this. Usually the tries are the biggest part of the arm, and if you look here, it's just flat and ugly, and then the bicep is just overly massive. Now, with Super 7, you can always see the separation in the joints, though this one looks better than it did on Tiger and some of the other figures. Bringing Bengali back to the front. This piece bothers me for some reason. It has a very weird sheen to it, if that's the correct word. It almost seems as if this was glossy. They decided to dull it down and they used some chemical to do so, and it left this foggy residue. That's what I wanted to say. It has like this foggy finish to it, and I really don't like that. So coming down to the legs, wish that the feet had some variation in color. Maybe some grays to help bring it out, because they're just white. And with that, it almost looks as if looks like an artist proof. So for design, this figure looks a lot better than its predecessor, and I'm going to give Bengali a 7 out of 10 for design. So is Bengali essential to your collection? Well, that will depend on the Thundercat fan that you ask. So Bengali didn't appear into the original cartoon until many episodes later, way into season 2. The story has it that Bengali, along with 2 of his other comrades, were rescued from the planet of Thundera just before the moment of impact as a Burbill spaceship picked them up. In some sort of stroke of irony, luck, or convenient writing, the Burbill spaceship crash landed on Third Earth. You know, it's not like exactly like Third Earth was the next planet over. If you remember the very first episode, they were traveling for a long time before they reached Third Earth. So much time, actually, that they had to go into capsules to go to sleep. So Jago would appear to Lion-O and inform him that there were 3 survivors from the planet of Thundera. Chitara would use out her 6th sense to find those 3 survivors. So Bengali and his other 2 comrades would eventually become honorary members of the Thundercats. So some Thundercat fans view Bengali as lesser of a character, as he was not one of the original Thundercats. Now on to skill set and craft. Bengali is an expert blacksmith. Bengali wields the Hammer of Thundera, which is, if I'm not mistaken, one of the only tools that can reforge the Sword of Omens. Though if I remember in the first season, the Sword of Omens was actually forged by being placed in a volcano or within a star. I don't remember. Let me know if I have that correct. So the Hammer of Thundera acts as a tool as well as a weapon, being able to emit energy blast. So now as far as toy options, we saw Bengali in original LJN line, but since then, nothing else. If you're looking for action figures to acquire of Bengali, it is the LJN or this. So as far as being essential to your collection, I wanted to give this a half, like 0.5, but I don't know if I've ever given anything like a 0.5. So as far as being essential to your collection, I'm going to give Bengali a 7 out of 10. So for functionality, Bengali clearly passes the stand test. We have to talk about this head. Super 7 has to incorporate a better system. And being that I popped off the head, I'll show the other. But if you look at the ball peg, look, it doesn't move. Look at that. It just springs right back to action. This is very unfortunate, and for a company to be creating action figures for such a long time, they should know better than this. All right, so here's the secondary head. I think I like the calmer expression better. Let's go ahead and swap out one of the hands. Actually, before I swap out this hand, you can see that it has a vertical hinge. Let me see if I can place the Hammer of Thundera in it while it's off. So just looking at the hammer itself, don't think I'm going to be able to do it like this. So let's pry back the fingers if we can. And I'm going off camera for this. All right, so my recommendation is to use the hammer to pull the thumb back, and as the thumb is pulled back, force the hammer inside and then wedge the other fingers apart. Now that that's on, let's go ahead and plug the hand in that has the peg, always like that, and you can see that it goes up and down, so that's great. And he holds that very firm. So let's go ahead and bring the blacksmith table. I'm going to see if I can find something to elevate this. All right, so I found something to prop under. Hopefully it works all right. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and place the Sword of Omens. Let's see if I can put him in a decent pose. So being that the head doesn't pivot, there are no butterfly joints, it's not the easiest to get him in the pose that I wanted to. But here you have a blacksmith about to beat the crap out of a sword. Really digging these accessories. So moving this to the side, he also has his metal ore, which you can place in his hand, and he also holds that pretty secure. So now I'm going to the torso. Looking at the harness, it really does not impede articulation, as limited as it is. So when it comes to this figure, the hands work well enough with the weapons, holding it very securely and tight. You have the vertical hinges, which is great. Now looking at the body itself, it is very antiquated. No butterfly joints, no neck movement, severe limitation on the elbows and knees. Now what's good about the figure is nothing really gets in the way. You can see that the trunks really don't hinder the leg. It's just that the leg doesn't move that far. And then you also have, almost missed this, this harness for his hammer. So I'm going to take it out of his hand so we can put it there. All right, so with the hammer out of his hand, it should fit in here easy. And it does. Though it doesn't appear to go down further than that. I'm not sure if that is accurate in the cartoon itself, but that's about it. So what saved Bengali was how he functions with his weapons. For overall functionality, I'm giving Bengali a 7 out of 10. So for pricing, if I'm not mistaken, this is when the Thundercats received the price hike. I think Bengali was $55. That's before taxes, that is before shipping. Adding the two, you're looking at a price point of roughly $64. So now is Bengali worth the price of admission? Well, let's see what he comes with. In terms of accessories, they are such a nice addition to this character. I really love that blacksmith table, if you don't already know by now. The Sword of Omens is also a nice touch. It just looks awful. It should have been translucent, and it should have been broken into pieces. In addition to that, you do receive Thundranium and a nice amount of hands, some that come with the vertical hinge, which all weapon holding characters should have. And you do have an additional head portrait, which has the Thundercats summoning call light up eye features. Now, what will hurt the pricing is this antiquated mole. So for pricing, I'm going to give Bengali a 6 out of 10. That should give Bengali an overall cliff score of. So now is Bengali a pass or a purchase? Well, this is the first wave from Super 7 to where I actually did not buy the entire wave. I made a decision that I'm not very happy with the offerings that Super 7 is giving us, and either I'm going to cherry pick my collection, see if I'm able to find one on clearance or maybe someone selling theirs before I just dive into the line. Now, while some people will consider Bengali a less of character, I guess I fit closer within that arena. I do not consider him one of the original Thundercats. However, he is a Thundercat. And with a team so small as the Thundercats, you need all that you can get. This overall body looks a lot better on this particular figure than some others, so he looks pretty good. So as far as being a pass or a purchase, this one is an absolute purchase. All right, so let's look at Bengali by itself. Let's go ahead and throw in that body that he absolutely shares. Oh, look at my Panthro. Oh, did I fail to mention that it is pinless joints on this figure? If I did, there you go. The surface that they're standing on is not flat. It's arched in certain areas, so may not be giving the best indication of height. Let's go ahead and throw in Shatara. Not sure why her hand is missing, but it is. Let's go ahead and get rid of Panthro. Let's throw in Gilius from Storm Collectibles Golden Axe. Oh, a lot taller than I thought. That is interesting. Let's get rid of Shatara and throw in Raphael from the NECA line. And maybe for the last comparison, let's go ahead and throw in Beastman from the new Eternia line. All right. So I want to thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. I hope to see you during the next episode.